welcome everybody. A20 Mini live training. Thank you for all of your wonderful feedback on the Mini. Huge response to it. We're really excited about this one. Lots of great features for, it does seem like it's our smallest product and, looks wise, maybe our simplest product, but so much care and design went into this. And I'm sure, Paul and Kish and Gary are going to speak about that, but really great. We're really excited about this one. At the bottom of Zoom, there's a Q&A. You can enter your questions as they're going. Once we hit like a natural breaking point, I will bring those up to our wireless experts here. There's also a chat feature. You can put your questions in that way, and I'll make sure they get up. This is being recorded, should go up within a couple of days. So you can always listen back for reference. So I think that is it for me. I'm gonna let y'all take over.
Great, thanks, Joe. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on this very exciting day. We're really excited and very proud to be sort of talking about and showing you some of the stuff about our newest and smallest product, the A20 Mini digital wireless transmitter. Here's one I have in my hand right here. Yeah, well, this has been, considering it's such a small project, small product, it's actually been one of our biggest projects to date. So we're so excited to get this out. But before we get into all the cool features in this very small miniature product, I'd just like to introduce you, just in case some of you don't know, my other two contributors here. We have Kish, who is our Sound Devices sales director and actually the ex-owner of Audio Limited. And as you know, Sound Devices bought Audio Limited several years ago, and we've been making great progress in the wireless domain. So that's Kish. Hi, Kish.
Hello everyone. Good to be here.
Excellent.
Glad to see finally the A20 Mini finally, 4 years of thought and ideas has gone into this. So it's great to see it. And so far we've had a fantastic reaction.
Yeah. And then we also have Gary Trender, who's actually a very new addition to Sound Devices. He's our lead RF applications engineer, and we're very happy to have him join Sound Devices. He's huge amounts of experience in live sound and RF coordination for super large events, none much bigger than the Super Bowl. So welcome, Gary, and great to have you here.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Great to be here.
All right. Well, without further ado, we're going to get straight into talking about this ultra small product. And in fact, Kish, why don't you give us a bit of background of why we decided to do this?
It was almost from day one of the original 1010 even, and then further evolving into the A10 series. Almost the first question people said was, is there a smaller one? For obvious reasons, partly because of the background of our older units, but so we always had it in our plan to have a mini transmitter, but the world of digital means there are many challenges to produce something of a small form factor, and quite a bit of it is governed by the battery compartment, as we've seen over the years. So it's been a labour of love and a lot of hair pulling and great feedback from customers as to what they wanted from this Mini. So yep. We've packed in a lot.
So it's not really just about the small miniature size of the transmitter, it's also about the shape as well. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our customers in the film and drama in particular have always said from day one, they don't want anything rectangular with corners on. They want it to feel like a bar of soap. And I think we've gotten incredibly close to doing exactly that. Because one of the primary requirements is underclothing, and particularly on tight costumes where corners stand out when they're lit, when the costume's lit. So having something like this with curves on it allows you to hide it really well, and the artists also like that aspect of being able to wear something which just has no corners on it.
Totally inconspicuous, right?
Absolutely.
And also it's water resistant, which is important, right, Kish?
Yeah. Yeah, as soon as it's under clothing, in warm temperatures or even stage, you're going to get sweat and etc. So we've done a huge amount of work in trying to make this as water resistant as it gets, including the battery compartment. So that's really was part and parcel of the design brief on this.
I mean, one of the obvious things about the Mini is there's no control interface on it. There's a bunch of LEDs which give various status information like audio level, mute status, charging, all this stuff, but there is no LCD or buttons on it. Well, that's not entirely true. There's one button on it, and that's underneath the flap where the battery is, this little red button here, and that turns the transmitter on or off, and also is used to pair this transmitter via Bluetooth with an app, which is where the full control of this transmitter comes from. And we've developed this new app called A20 Remote. And this is actually for Android and iOS phones and tablets. So it's totally agnostic as what platform you want to use. And that gives you full control. And we're really proud of this app. It's got an amazing range. I mean, we've been getting like well in excess of 40 feet line of sight, and even like over 20, 30 feet when it's buried in a costume. So what that does is it really does enable you to fully control the transmitter remotely. So that has also enabled us to make this unit smaller by not having all those control buttons on the unit. So yeah, full remote control via the app. And we're going to show you some of that now. Hey, Gary, why don't you show some of the features of the app?
Sure thing.
In fact, might be good to just quickly show how you compare, when you buy your A20 Mini and it comes fresh out of the box, how do you go about actually pairing it with your phone? And before we go on and show that, it might be worth noting that you can, once you've paired a transmitter with your phone, you don't need to go through that pairing process ever again. It's always there. So you don't need to keep doing this. It's a one-off process. Of course, you can unpair the transmitter if you want to, but once it's there, you can pair it. And that doesn't mean you have to use it. It means it's just an available transmitter in your archive that you can use for different projects. The other nice thing is multiple different devices, phones and tablets, can all pair with the same device. So that's useful if you work with a utility or two utility people, and you want to quickly take over control of that transmitter. There's a very, very quick handover process between iOS and Android devices to control a transmitter. So Gary, let's show us around the app a little bit.
Sure. So I just pulled up the A20 Remote app on my phone, and you're seeing I've got one transmitter that is on my transmitter list with the app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, you'll be able to see this in my camera view here. I'm going to take my other transmitter, and the first thing I'm doing is powering it down.
By holding the red button for about 3 seconds.
Hold the small red button there.
Yeah, the LED flashes when it's telling you it's okay to power down.
And I'm going to press and hold the red button. And then what you should see after a few seconds is there's a blue light that starts flashing on the transmitter there. And it flashes both top and bottom on the transmitter. And so now what that's flashing, it means that this is available to pair. So I'll hit the little gear icon here, and it'll take me over to my manage transmitters page. And you'll see there's my second transmitter called Ernie, which is not paired yet. I can just click that checkbox, hit OK. And now I've paired it up. And if I want it to show up in my transmitters list, I have to make sure that this enable switch is clicked right there. So now I have two transmitters, Bert and Ernie, that are both paired and enabled. So if I go back now on my transmitter list, I'll see both these transmitters. And I'll notice that the one transmitter is on. I've got good Bluetooth connection to it, and I've got 90% battery. So at this point, I can control either transmitter simply by tapping on it in the transmitter list, and it takes me into a new view that shows me all the settings for the transmitter.
Excellent.
All right. Do you, Paul, do you want to go through some of the available settings here while we're here?
Yeah, while we're here, let's just quickly go mention what they are and what they do.
Okay. So now I'm paired up. I've clicked on the transmitter. I'm seeing the individual transmitter view. It's showing me the frequency that I'm transmitting on, my RF power level, battery level, and it mentions that I have a lithium ion battery in there. The other option it would show in here would be AAA if you've got the lithium AAA cells. Those are the two options for battery.
You know, while we're on the subject of powering, Gary, we might as well talk about that. As Gary just mentioned, there are two powering options: lithium-ion standard MPBX1 batteries, which are ubiquitous and available everywhere and very good value for money. We recommend the Sony ones. And you can also power by AAA batteries too. And again, we recommend using lithium primaries for that. We've calibrated the battery warning thresholds according to those two batteries, and they work very well. Now, when you're working with a lithium ion MPBX1, you can see that you get a very accurate battery remaining time. At the top of that little window there, it says 89%. That's really precise. And we've calibrated that so that it gives you great warning. You know, that indicator will turn, it will turn orange, then it will turn red, then it will flash red. So you get plenty of warning when battery's getting low. And with AA batteries, we've done the same, but it's based on voltage. Now, the good thing to note is that this transmitter will actually charge an MPBX1 as well. You simply plug in a USB power source into the Usbc port just here, and away you go. You can connect that to any wall USB power supply. You can connect it to any USB source. But we also have an accessory, which we'll talk more about a little bit later, called the Power Station 8M, which allows you to charge 8 A20 minis simultaneously, which is really useful. Do you want to carry on, Gary?
Sure. So you can see I just popped over the other transmitter and I've plugged it into a USB power supply, and you can see exactly what Paul was talking about. You'll get a small little lightning bolt charging indicator there, and it says it's powering off of USB.
Excellent. Okay, do you want to carry on just quickly going around the app?
Sure. So in the app, we've got a number of easy options that you're probably familiar with if you've used wireless transmitters before. You can rename the transmitter if you wanted. If you've got two guys named Ernie, this can be Ernie 2. If you need to change your frequency, you can easily change the frequency here.
Yep. Quickly, Gary, on that subject of naming the transmitter, you know, very easy. The nice thing about that name, it's not just showing up on the actual app itself. That is actually becomes the name of the recording media. Because one thing we haven't mentioned yet, although I think it's pretty obvious from this app, is that this transmitter is a recording transmitter. It can record simultaneously and transmit simultaneously if you're outside the US. If you're inside the US, then it's record or transmit. But when you are recording, that name that you enter there becomes the name of the formatted media. There's a internal 64 gig media, which gives, you know, around 90 hours of record time at, you know, 48 kilohertz sampling. And we do record in 32-bit float format. I'm going to go into a little bit more about that once we've just finished with the app, because we really want to talk about gain forward and what that means. It's a new technology that we've introduced in A20 Mini. But yeah, that name does become the name of the media, which means when you mount this transmitter on a computer, you can connect it via this USB-C port. This will appear as a volume on your PC or a Mac, and the name of that media will be the name you enter there. So it's very easy to identify what's what. The other thing about that name is, if you have an 8 series recorder, that name will ripple all the way through to the channel name on your 8 series. So you only need to enter it in this one space. That's an option. You don't have to use that feature, but it's there in the super slot menu. Do you want to carry on, Gary?
Sure. So we've changed the name of the transmitter. We changed it back. We looked at the frequency menu. When you go into the frequency menu, you've got a little spinner here that decides what your megahertz value is going to be. You've got another spinner for your kilohertz value. If you're doing even spacing with your transmitters, you've got an easy up and down button. So I could just quickly add 400 kilohertz to the frequency. And then once you have a frequency you like, you just hit set frequency and it sends it. It's just that easy. Now you're transmitting at a new frequency.
Right, Gary, why don't you talk a little bit about the tuning range of the A20 Mini, because it's astounding.
Sure. Yeah, the tuning range is great. It's 470 to 694 meg. So that's the entirety of the UHF TV band for many countries, including the United States and the UK. We're able to adjust the tuning range based on the country that you're in. So because I'm in the United States, if I go back into the frequency menu here and I start to spin up in frequency, you'll notice that it's going to stop at 608 and then start up again at 614. And then it's going to stop and it's going to start up again at 650. So because we've got our core UHF TV band here is 470 to 608. And then we've got a guard band and a duplex gap that we're also able to operate in. There's different power level requirements in those bands, and that will also automatically be adjusted. So the app will tell you what your maximum legal power levels are in those bands. And some of the bands that we operate in, you'll also see a license icon that shows up. So let me see if I can pick one of those frequencies. Oh, sorry. Got to pick a valid frequency. So here, if I pick a frequency up in 650, in the US, that requires a Part 74 license. And so you'll see that little license icon indicating that. And so for the operators of these devices, it's a good reminder that you have to make sure that you've got the appropriate license to operate on the frequency that you've just set the transmitter to.
Great.
Let's see, what else do we want to go over?
Let's carry on through the RF power.
Sounds good. All right. So I'm just setting it back to the frequency I was at before.
Okay.
So yeah, you've got a RF power level here. This is also where your RF off would be. So you can actually turn the carrier off if you need to. Let's say you're setting up and you don't want to start transmitting yet, but you just want to set your frequencies. Or if you just want to conserve battery life, obviously the RF amplifier in these packs is one of the main consumers of battery power. So turning that off increases your battery life significantly. So you can turn the RF power off, and then you've got 4 different levels to choose from. There's a low setting for 2 milliwatts. There's our normal setting at 10 milliwatts, which is good for a lot of applications out there and gives you good battery life. There's a high power if you need a little bit more range. And then if you really need to get the maximum distance out of it, and you don't mind changing your batteries a little more often, you've got a max power of 40 milliwatts. So I'm going to set it back to a normal level of 10. You can see this is all happening pretty quickly, but when I change these settings, as I hit OK, you'll just see a sending command, and then it pops you back to the menu as soon as it sees that the transmitter is changed and receives a confirmation that you've adjusted that setting. There's a mic mute function on here, which is pretty easy. Just mute on or mute off if you want to simply mute the microphone without turning the whole pack off. Although I think a lot of times users are going to really want to just power the whole pack down, because I'll show you with the power button here. Right. That's very fast as well. You can power the entire pack down, but it's still available for Bluetooth control. You've now reduced your battery consumption very significantly, and you can turn it back on in just a matter of seconds.
I mean, in that off state, Gary, I mean, the battery is going to last for months, right?
That's right. Yeah. With all you're really powering at that point is the Bluetooth low energy portion of the pack, which with the size battery that this has will last for months.
And notice how quick it is to power on and power off. I mean, it's virtually instantaneous. Do you want to show that again?
Yep. There we're powered off. And there we're powered on. When we go to a screen share with a spectrum analyzer, I'll actually do that same function again and just show you how quickly the carrier turns off and on if you're looking at the actual RF transmission.
Right. Can you just quickly show the LED on the actual transmitter itself, the power LED go on and off along with that in real time?
So here you can see the green LED on the side of the pack. Mm-hmm. So as I press that to turn off, although of course let's see, there we go. And then just power on.
Instant.
So we'll do that one more time, power off. And that takes a little bit longer for the LED to go off, but then on is almost instantaneous.
Great. Okay. So yeah, with the mute mic, when that's active, there's also a blue LED that comes on by the the lav input. You can quickly show that as well. So it's pretty.
So we've got, as I'm talking, you'll see that green LED flashing because the lav mic is picking up my voice. And then as I hit the mute here, you see that just turns a solid blue color to indicate that you're muted.
Right, and that mute and signal level is also shown in the icon in the app, isn't it?
It is. So if we go back to the main screen here, you can see it. This is probably where people are going to care about it, but that green dot up in the corner of the transmitter icon. And then if I'm in the individual transmitter view, you see the same thing, both up on the quick menu up top, which we didn't talk about, but there's a quick menu where I can jump between transmitters right on the top of the app here, where I'm going between Bert and Ernie. If you notice the little white line that highlights which transmitter I'm looking at. And if you have multiple transmitters, this top menu is scrollable. Then if you have a large number of transmitters, you might want to go back to the transmitter list, and you could have 20 transmitters on here if you needed to.
Great. Okay, let's rapidly go through the rest of this screen, and then we'll move on.
So your mode here, as we discussed, there's a record only mode and an RF only mode. I can pull up a demo of an international pack later to show you Rec plus RF. And then we've got an option here to format media, which is, as it sounds, just formats the internal media. The size of the internal media in this thing is what, Paul?
64 gig. Yeah, and that'll give you way in excess of 80 hours. So, and that's at 48K 32-bit float.
Yeah, which is awesome. It gives you a ton of recording time. You've got
just to state also that if you are doing super long recordings, I think if you go beyond 6 hours, the file size reaches about 4 gig, which is the maximum for a standard wave. As soon as it gets bigger than that, it will automatically convert to RF64, so an RF64 wave file. So you don't even have to think about it.
That's right. Yeah. We've got a restore defaults here, which again, as it sounds, will bring you back to all the factory default settings. We've got an information menu, which can be helpful. I'll bring that up. It'll show you the A20 Mini software version. We're running a beta version of 1.02, but the release version right now is 1.01. Then we've got your serial number. It'll tell you international here for the pack that I'm looking at, which will indicate that you're able to do the simultaneous record and transmit if you're outside the US. It'll also give you a good indication here of the channel number you're using. If you're on the dash channels, I like to call them, but if you're used to tuning a A10 receiver, it'll tell you the A10 receiver channel that you're on or that you're closest to. In this case, I'm not specifically on a channel, so it gives me that little asterisk there, but you see where it says TV channel 32-05. If there's no asterisk, you can directly key that into your A10, or you can tune in 25 kilohertz steps as we're doing here. And it also tells you the antenna length. So if you're cutting your own antennas down, it'll tell you what length to cut that antenna to for the frequency that we're currently tuned to.
Great.
Down at the bottom, you've got power on when removed from power station. Paul's going to go through the power station a little bit later, but if you want the pack to automatically turn on as soon as you remove it from this power station charger, you can select that option here. That's a global option, or sorry, that's an individual option for each pack. Then there's an auto power with lav connection. Same thing. If you were to plug in a lav mic, it'll automatically turn the transmitter on and start powering. And that's an individual setting for each pack. And then the global settings are underneath your gear icon here that you access from the transmitter list. When you press that gear icon, your global setting is power off from app requires confirmation. So I'll engage that quickly just so you can see when I go into one of these packs. Now, if I hit the power button, I get a little pop-up that says, are you sure you want to turn the device off? So if you're worried about accidentally turning off, you can enable that pop-up.
Yep.
Power on obviously doesn't require it.
Yep.
But if I decide that I'm not going to hit it accidentally, I can turn that back off.
Notice with that list, I mean, you've got all of that's a scrollable list, right? And I think you've got a vast number of transmitters that have been paired, but notice that he's only enabled 2 of them because this particular project Gary is working on only requires 2. But if he wanted to do another project, he can just enable whichever ones he wants.
Yeah,
So,
and this is a good example of how the default name of the transmitter is just the serial number from the transmitter. So you'll see those serial numbers on there for other transmitters that I've paired with. This is a great thing. If you've got a large inventory of A20 minis, you can have your entire inventory paired with your device, and then you just enable the particular transmitters that you're using on set that day.
right. Great. And then the transport buttons on the right. We should go.
Yeah, transport on the right. We talked about the power button. The other thing we have is an ID button. So if I have these two packs here, just sitting down and I'm not sure which is which, see, I say, okay, which one's Bert? And if I hit ID, I can see that one starts flashing. It flashes actually the LED on the side and both the top and bottom LEDs in the middle of the pack. Then same thing, I go back into the app and you can see the ID is flashing there to indicate that I've activated the ID function. If I tap that again, it will turn the ID off.
Right.
If I throw my pack into recording mode, now I'll have the recording transport controls enabled. And so you can see there's a bit of a change in the menu now where it says record only, but it starts to run time code. It tells me my frame rate. This is based on the last device I've jammed time code to or sync to.
Right.
It says I'm recording in 32-bit float, 48K, and it gives me an estimated time remaining on my internal storage. So I can easily just press the record button. We've got a nice bright red indicator on both the button and around the display for the transmitter that tells you you're recording. And you can see I've started to count up now. I've been recording for 10 seconds on that device.
Show the LEDs. That's it. You got it.
And then on here, we've got a red LED indicating that I'm recording on my transmitter. And that's both, again, middle LED, top and bottom of the transmitter.
Great. Awesome.
And then the stop, as you imagine, stops your recording.
There you go. So that's a pretty good overview of not SD Remote, A20 Remote. I do want to move on now. We'll talk about time code and some other stuff shortly, but really, I think one, if not the most amazing parts of the A20 Mini is what we call gain forward. And this is really a groundbreaking method for capturing audio on a transmitter. And basically, you know, we're all used to adjusting gain on the transmitter. That's been the convention forever. This transmitter, you don't need to adjust gain on the transmitter. In fact, there is no gain on the transmitter. And while that sounds like, hold on a second, that sounds like a bit of BS. What's made this possible is the fact that we have, well, it's a combination of things, but we have a huge dynamic range on the input stage of the transmitter. So the mic preamp and the multi ADC stage of the transmitter had this vast dynamic range of more than 130 dBs, and that is bigger than dynamic range than really any lav out there has. So this dynamic range comes from the fact that it's a very, very low noise mic preamp. I mean, it's about minus 126 dBA weighted EIN. And it can also handle a maximum input voltage of around plus 5 dBu, which is much higher than any lav can produce. So what that means is we can capture that entire range of signal without any loss in quality or distortion. If anything is going to distort, it's going to be the lav itself. So it is still important that you choose the right sensitivity lav for your particular application. Now, that signal, that 132 dB signal, is actually converted to 32-bit float, which is a container, which is a huge container. It can handle a dynamic range of about 1500 dB. And essentially, we transmit that whole 130 dBs of dynamic range to the A10RX receiver, where the signal is decoded, and all the gain, the digital gain, happens on the receive side or the 8 series side. The big advantage of that is that you're not reliant on a backlink with its issues of possibly range, not being able to control the transmitter gain. And also the fact that because you're controlling the trim gain at the receive side, it's totally instantaneous, it's real time, it's dynamic, there's no lag, which can often be associated with backlinks. So there's a huge advantage there. Do you have anything to add on this, Kish?
Well, one of the things that was always said on set was, they do rehearsals and actors are wonderful. The levels are just perfect. They go into, this is the feedback we've had from sound mixers, is they go into the action and suddenly they either drop to 15 dB or they're shouting, and quite often by that time it's too late, you can't do any changes, and therefore this just helps enormously to be able to tweak that at the receive end in a live situation, and also on the 8 series, of course.
Yeah, that's really important. That instantaneous control of trim without any of the concerns of a backlink is really groundbreaking. Now, the fact that this is at the receive end, it's the 32-bit float is converted automatically back to 24-bit, so it passes through the whole, the analog outputs of the receiver, the AES outputs of the receiver, and if you're using an 8 series via super slot to the 8 series, where it all becomes 24-bit. All of that is handled intrinsically as part of the audio signal chain. So that's going forward, and it's a big step forward, a real big step forward. It goes without saying, I do want to, the quality of the mic preamp on the transmitter is what you'd expect. Audio Limited, and Sound Devices are both famous for the quality of their mic preamps. This is that same, the clarity is second to none. It's essentially sounds the same as a wired mic. It's really good. The range of the Mini is exceptional as well. It matches the A10TX. So yeah, a really neat system there. I do want to talk a little bit now about, we haven't really spoken about in too much detail about this USB-C port. We have mentioned that it's multi-purpose and that it's used for charging the internal MPBX1, and you can see all that charging status from the app, etc. But it can actually also just be used to power simultaneously, power the A20. So if you want to use this with an external miniature USB power bank, you can, no problem. We're going to talk about the power station in a minute and how you can actually slot these into a power station. But the other thing that this port does, USB-C, is file transfer, because we have 64 gig in there, internal 64 gig media, that we have to have some way to drag the files off. So you simply connect that to your PC or Mac. You'll see this as a volume on your computer, and then you can just drag the files onto your desktop or do whatever you need. Now, I do want to quickly mention that we have developed a new Mac and PC app called SD Utility, which is a utility for converting the files on the A20 Mini. Now, these are standard WAV files. So in many respects, in many applications, you don't even need to use this app. If you've got a 32-bit float workflow, you simply just drag those files into your DAW of choice and away you go. But if you want to convert those files to 24-bit, that app does that, and it's a batch function, so it's really quite quick if you've got multiple files on there. The SD Utility app also takes all the features from our original Mic to Wave app, which was developed for the A10TX. SD Utility takes all those functions. It will work with A10TX.mic files, but obviously the new WAV files that are recorded on the A20 Mini 2. And you can do things like conform the files, you can snip files according to timecode range, you can rename files, you can do all sorts of things there. So that's SD Utility. The other function of the USB-C port is that this is how you can jam the A20 Mini. And there's various ways to do this. We've got a number of optional accessory cables here. We have standard LEMO to USB-C. So you simply plug the USB-C into the port here, and the other end into your timecode generator. And as soon as you plug that in, it will automatically jam the A20 Mini. And you'll see 2 LEDs flash here on the A20 Mini, indicating that it's going through the jam process. It only takes a second or two, but it automatically picks up the frame rate as well. So it's a simple plug in, takes a couple of seconds, it's jammed. Once it's jammed, it will very accurately hold that time code for a long time. We have like an accuracy of about 0.2 ppm, which equates to like not even a frame's worth of drift over 24 hours. So it's super accurate. You shouldn't need to jam these more than once a day. If you have to do a battery change, it will hold that accurate time code for an hour. So you don't have to rejam. If you leave the battery and just power the unit down, it will also hold that time code, but it will hold it for 4 hours. So if you're going away for lunch, and you can turn the unit off and not worry about having to rejam. So that's one option, the LEMO to USB-C. We also have a BNC to USB-C. So if you're using a BNC timecode source, but if you're super cool, we have developed a new way of jamming over USB from an 8 series. And I'm going to see if I can demonstrate this very quickly, because I'm going to switch my camera and hopefully you'll see this. So, okay, good. So I'm just going to come into my screen down here on my 8 series. And now what I'm going to do is connect this to, I need a USB-A to USB-C. So what you do is, whoops, here we go. So I'm going to plug in a USB-A cable here into the USB-A port on my 8 series right there. And I'm just going to show you the menu while I'm doing this. If I come into my timecode menu down here, you'll see there's this new menu called on number 5, which is grayed out currently. It's called Jam A20 Mini. And I can then, I'm just going to unplug this lav. No, I'm not going to unplug this for a minute, just like, because I've got a right angle cable here. It's not ideal, but I'm going to plug that in. And you'll see as soon as I do that, that menu becomes ungrayed. So then I can select it and come in here, and you'll see that the current A20 Mini time code is 20 hours and the 888 time code is at 119. And you can see the difference field there showing your offset. Very good for monitoring drift. So at this point, I can simply hit the jam button, and now you can see they're totally in sync and locked. So this USB-C port is actually an input and an output. And it actually could be used to jam other devices now if you wanted to. But that's a really neat way of being able to monitor the drift on your A20 Mini. Not that there is going to be any. The other thing is that timecode value is shown in the A20 Remote app. I think Gary showed you that earlier. All right. So let's come back here, switch my camera. That's timecode. Okay, what else is there to say? I think we've covered pretty much a good range of the features here. It might be worth talking about the power station at this point. And in fact, I don't know why I even switched my camera. Let's take a look at the power station. And what is the power station? Well, this is an optional accessory. You can see it here on top of the SL2 there. Here it is. It's an 8-bay charger for the A20 Mini, and it's very easy to slide in up to 8 of our A20 Minis. You don't need to remove the antenna, but we do recommend removing the lav. So let me just show you that. So here's a transmitter I've got here right now. So you can literally, you can see the holes in the chassis here. Each compartment has a USB-C connector. I can just slide this in, and it doesn't matter which way up you insert the A20 Mini. You can do it either way. So there's no chance you're going to break any connector like that. As soon as you slide it in, you can see that this charge LED is indicating that it's in the process of being charged. If it turns green, you know it's fully charged. Now I can connect 8 of these. I can connect another one. Let's do that. And away you go. So it's a really quick way of charging your A20 Minis. Now it's not just about charging. We can also connect the Power Station 8M to a computer. Let's just take a look at the reverse side here very quickly. And you can see we have, well, there's 2 USB-C ports. So this USB-C cable right now is plugged into the file transfer port, and it's actually connected to my computer at the minute. You can tell that by the green light. And what that means is all of those A20 Minis will appear as volumes on your desktop. So you get to see all 8 A20 Minis if you had all of those bays populated. This is great because then I can drag all of those volumes into an app, and it will just import them all into one step. And that includes SD utility. It's a very fast way of dragging files from multiple transmitters into the SD utility app for conversion. Very, very fast. And remember, those volume names of the A20 Minis corresponds to the talent name that you gave to each transmitter. There's another USB-C port here. That's for powering. It uses the USB PD spec, which is requires 36 watt power supply, which we provide. No, we don't provide that. We provide the cables, and that will charge very fast all 8 bays. If you don't use a USB PD power source and it's just standard USB PD, only the first 3 bays will be powered. And then here we have another power port. You can use either this or the USB PD power port. This is just a standard TA4, 10 volts to 18 volts. So it's pretty standard. And then the final connector is this BNC, which is labeled LTC in. And this is a super quick way to jam 8 transmitters simultaneously. Simply connects all your transmitters, connect your BNC, and it all happens within about a second or 2. All right, so that's a really worthwhile optional accessory if you're dealing with multiple transmitters. All right, while on the subject of, we've spoken about, I'm going to just switch my camera here again. No, I'll leave it there, because I do want to just talk about one other feature, which I mentioned earlier, actually, regarding the SL2 and the super slot compatibility between the A20 Mini and the 8 series. Obviously, we've made, with the latest code, version 8.10 on the 8 series, we have full compatibility with the A20 Mini and the A10TX, of course. All the battery level from the A20 Mini is conveyed here, the record status, the mute status, and various other information like whether the high pass filter and the limiter on. But just bear in mind, with the A20 Mini, there's no gain on that. And in fact, there's no limiter or low cut filter on the Mini. All that is handled on the receive side. And it's worth pointing out that when you're connected to the 8 series via super slot, all of that is handled by the 8 series itself. If you're using the A10RX standalone with another manufacturer's mixer, all of the low cut, limiter, and gain is actually handled directly on the A10RX itself. And there's a new version of firmware for that as well, version 4. And you can go in there and there's a new menu which allows you to adjust the gain, limiter, or low cut for the A20 Mini. Okay, one feature I want to quickly show at the bottom of the SL2 options menu is this use transmitter names function. And you may recall me talking about, if you enter the name of your transmitter using the A20 Remote app, that when this is on here, that name will ripple through the receiver all the way to your channel name that you've selected the A20-Mini as source to. So in this case, you can see the names of the two transmitters I've got here. And that will update in real time as you edit it from the A20 Remote app. Okay, I'm going to definitely switch my camera back now, and we'll almost done here on a good overview of this. Let's talk a little bit about some other accessories here. We also mentioned the USB-C to Lima and BNC cables for jamming, but the included accessories, Kish, do you want to just talk about those? You're muted, Kish.
Yeah, you hit the space bar, like Zoom says, and it doesn't work. So the vagaries of technology. The transmitter comes with 3 antennas, 2 to cover the UHF band, and there's a third as a spare antenna. There's also a pouch for the transmitter. Should you not want to use the transmitter under clothing or hidden away, and you just want to use it as a quick put onto a talent, and it's going to be in shot, there is a cradle which you can put the transmitter into, and also it will you can put it either way around. So if you want to put it on the belt or on the skirt, it will work both ways around, so either up or down. There's an opening on the bottom there. So yeah, absolutely.
Switching around here.
So very, very simple, very easy to use.
Okay.
So that comes with the units as well.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, Kish.
The other thing sorry, Paul, are you just talking about the USB-C port on the front of the Mini?
Yeah.
That's also a waterproof connector, so so that will also prevent sweat and water going into the unit itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. What else would? I think we've sort of like gone over sort of like the key functions. There's a lot to this, as you can see, and we've gone over this as a brief overview, but I think we've given a good coverage there. I'd like to open this up to questions and a Q&A session, but before we do, there's a huge amount of information on our website that if you want to get into get a lot more information, please visit our website. There's specs, there's a great FAQ document. We've got I think a great series of videos on the different aspects of the transmitter. Really great video series. I think there's 12 videos in that series, and then there's some really in-depth articles about how gain forward works and 32-bit float. And then there's obviously a very, very good detailed user guide, which I highly recommend reading if you really want to fully understand all the capabilities of this. Yeah, Joe, anything we've not covered that we should?
No, I think we covered it. I'm going to put in the chat now if everyone wants to open that. That is the Gain Forward article. Really, really good stuff. Really interesting white paper. Like Paul said, in the Learn tab on the website, video playlist with 12 videos. Even more coming very, very soon as we're working on those. Couple of questions here. Not a question, but a comment from our guy, Dan McCoy. Dan says, fantastic work. He's going to be the first in line at LSC for repair. So shout out to Dan.
Excellent. Great, Dan.
Gary, this question came in and I sent it to Gary. He's going to answer this one. He's asked, I think Tails or Talis, Manfrenato, asking, how improved is the A20 compared to the A10TX related to efficiency and RF power output when it's very close to a body? So I think Gary's going to talk a little bit about absorption.
Yeah, so
Great.
Body absorption is not unique to A10 or any other manufacturer's wireless, but it's an absolute fact that as you take this antenna and put it closer and closer to the body, some of the RF power is going to be absorbed by the talent that you're putting the microphone on. And so it's always a good idea to try and space the antenna and the pack away from the talent as much as possible. And I see a lot of people using things like Ursa straps to put it in there that are also going to shield it a bit from the moisture. Keeping the antenna itself away from the body is good if you can. I know a lot of the folks out there have some small pieces of foam that they're using for lav mics anyway, maybe a little round piece of foam that they can put right at the top of the antenna. And so if you've got the pack itself in a pouch a bit away from the body, and then you've got the top of the antenna spaced off from the body a little bit, you can keep the antenna, I'll show you on here, if you keep this aerial part from being particularly touching sweaty skin, that helps quite a bit with body absorption. And as Kish mentioned before, it comes with 2 different antenna lengths. Make sure you're using the correct length of antenna for the frequency that you're tuned to, because that is also going to increase your RF transmission by using the right antenna.
All right. Question from Chris: is it possible to play back the internal recordings with the app? Not currently.
No, that's not possible. To play them back, you'd have to take the files to a computer to do that.
Let me see. So, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. It looks like Yev Marie Omna says, why record media in 32-bit?
Why record media in 32-bit float?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it comes down to being able to, a big part of that is the ability to not have to worry about trim gain. It's all part of the gain forward aspect of this product. And the need to not have to adjust or change gain on the transmitter itself. And only adjusting the transmitter audio level at your receive side. So that's a fundamental part of that.
Paul, we had one question about using the TX as a recorder. I'm going to try and do a quick screen share one more time here.
Yeah.
So I promised I'd show both. I've got my app set up in a demo mode now, so I can show you the international. Here. I'll have to go back in here and mute. Yeah. All right. So now, well, maybe not. Oh, there we go. So this is what your record plus RF mode is going to look like. So it's, if you're, let's say in the UK, this will give you the ability to both be transmitting RF to an A10 receiver, and then you see the time code running, and I can start recording. And so now I'm recording locally on the A20 Mini, and I'm also sending the signal back to the receiver, and you could be recording that in your 8 series mixer recorder.
Great. One thing, going back to 32-bit float recording, as I mentioned before, if the workflow requires a 24-bit workflow, if posts demand that, then the SD Utility app has a conversion from 32-bit float to 24-bit. And actually, it's not just converting the file, it's also normalizing the file to minus 0.1 dBFS. So there's absolutely zero chance of clipping at all. The only way you're going to get clipping with this A20 Mini workflow is if the lav clips. Right. That's the only place that can happen.
Mm-hmm. And there will be a full video overview on SD Utility very soon, within, the next week or so. So keep an eye out with that. Obviously those go to our YouTube channel. They should be posted around on social media. An anonymous user, can I jam timecode from a device with LEMO? Yes, you can. You just need the LEMO to USB-C cable. And there is a full, Paul's got it right there. There's a video on that. So I will link the YouTube playlist here for you guys in just a second. 12 videos in there. It does cover jamming from the 8 series, initial setup from the app, jamming via LEMO. So lots of good stuff in that one.
There's a question about more frequency bands.
Yep.
They mentioned specifically electrosonics being in the 950 or so STL band in the USA. Stay tuned for more on that. We're always looking at expanding what frequency bands we can operate in.
There you go.
I also mentioned just on the SD Utility. So all of those people who've got mic to WAV can switch that off and download SD Utility, and that is still applicable for the A10, and also updating your A10 receivers. If you wanted to work with the A20 Mini, you need to download the A10RX 4.0, and that must be done via SD Utility. So mic to AV pretty much now is redundant.
Yeah.
Right. And you also have the ability to still create the user groups, etc.
Yes.
on your A10RX. Great.
Someone has a question about heat generated by the Mini. Anything significant there for long, extended runtime?
No, I think during our testing, as we mentioned, the door itself is metal, but then the rounded part of the pack is plastic. It's a Ultem plastic, which is specifically designed for chemical resistance, and it does a good job of spreading out the heat. There's not a ton of heat generated inside of this. Obviously, we're looking at conserving battery life, and so hotter is burning the battery faster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are extremely robust. I mean, this Ultem thermoplastic is super strong, but it's also really lightweight. So it is a very light transmitter and rock solid. The actual door itself is aluminium, and this is closed, and there's like a sealed gasket around that when it's closed, so it is water resistant.
I think this is just a general question, but it says, will you open new super slot capabilities? I'm not sure what you mean by new super slot capabilities to other manufacturers, but yes, super slot is just open. Anyone can contact us and get in on that protocol.
Okay.
Any manufacturers, that's fine. Is there actually a separate version for the international version? So no, you should just buy it in the country you're in, where you're living. And like Gary said, they all have the full range all the way across.
Yeah, the only difference really is that if you buy a US version where the serial number is from a device that's shipped from the US, then that one will not have the record plus RF function, but any place else internationally will have all the functions available.
The US version will have record or transmit, but not simultaneously.
Right.
A question from Doug. He asking if there's any like waist clip attachment instead of using the pouch.
No,
so not like
at the moment.
not like on the A10. So this one is mainly going to, since the body worn transmitter, your best bet's going to be like the actual like Ursa straps and things like that.
Good questions.
Yeah. Is it possible to use on a boom, and is it more protected with RF spray? No boom on this one. Lob only, body worn only. Can't provide 48 volt power. So no phantom power on this one. It was it's intended as a true, body worn transmitter.
The A10TX is your best friend there.
Yes. Yeah. A10TX still sounds great, and the good thing is that, the A20 Mini just plugs right into your A10 system. Almost effortlessly.
The two transmitters are like brother and sister. Yeah. They work very well together.
Okay.
Mind you, not all brothers and sisters get on well.
Right. They do in our family.
There was one question in the chat about range, and as we mentioned briefly, the range on the A20 Mini is going to be very much similar to the range you're used to on the A10TX. There's not a significant difference between the two.
Another question, what about battery life? So again, dependent on, your RF power, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, Gary, do you want to talk about this?
Sure, yeah. So battery life obviously changes with your RF power level. The higher your RF power, the more it's going to eat up your battery. That's just kind of a fact of how it works. But as we talked about with the power function from the app, we're expecting people, between takes to be able to just power down and see significant improvements in life. If you think about how long you've got this transmitter on talent versus how long they're actually needing to record, we're going to be able to power down and get, perhaps double what you're seeing with our battery runtimes. There's a page in the user manual that'll give you the battery runtimes for the various power levels with transmit and transmit record. I
think it's roughly, for the normal 10 milliwatt setting, which is going to cater to 90% of scenarios, you're looking at around up to about 4.5 hours continuous record plus RF. I think that's with AAA batteries, and it's going to be a little bit less with an MPBX1, but that gives you an idea. Continuous use at 10 milliwatts, and if you use the on-off function because it's so quick to power off, then back on, then, you know, you could easily get a couple more hours, 2 or 3 hours out of that without a problem.
All right. Yeah, just the Learn tab video is up in the chat, just so everyone's there. Lots of stuff with the A20 videos. Really great, you know, white paper. Is it possible to turn all paired minis on and off simultaneously? And it looks like record simultaneously on and off. So like a grouping.
That is something we have obviously thought about. It's not in our initial release, but it's something we continue to think about. We think it's a very good idea, a big time-saving idea, but, you know, watch this space.
All right. So we have just hit our hour. Any last-minute questions? Anybody? Looking good. As always, if you have more questions about these, you can reach out to our sales team. You can reach out through our website. If you have any technical questions, our support team is always happy to talk to you. Again, the forums, the groups, we are there, you know, monitoring, taking questions and things like that. So anybody?
Oh, there's one last raised hand there.
Oh, okay. Let's let me see here. If you want to type your question, Vanderberg, hope I'm saying that right. We'll get you in there. You can use the chat function or the Q&A down at the bottom. Let's see. Okay. Distance range. Yeah, that's going to be dependent on quite a few different things with your RF power, your RF environment. Greg Palmer, how available are the A20? They are shipping now. Contact your favorite preferred SD reseller and you should be able to place an order yesterday. So recording 24-bit to increase record time. No, it's always going to be recording in 32-bit float.
I mean, really, you don't need to increase record time. You've got essentially 90 hours or so of record time on that 64 gig internal media.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Great.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, everybody. Yeah. This post should be up live. This video, you can always watch back, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks all.
Bye-bye.